Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies course, I've been creating a series of video presentations based on the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series. I'm in the CSS module, or the CSS section, in the Building Blocks module, and now we're going to talk about sizing items in CSS. Just so you're aware, we've so far gone through we've gone through all these in HTML. All right, and now we're in the CSS styling the webs. We did the first steps, and now we're in the building blocks. In the building blocks here, there are about 12 units or so, and we are now into the sizing items in CSS. All right, so we will have 1, 2, 3, 4 more to go. Then we'll jump into some styling and jump into some layout. All right, so as far as sizing items, as it says in the lessons we've gone through so far, we've come across a number of ways to size items on a web page using CSS. It says understanding how big the different features in your design will be is important. And in this lesson, they'll summarize various ways elements get a size via CSS and talk about a few terms regarding sizing. All right, so HTML elements, as it says, have a natural size set before they are affected by any CSS. A straightforward example is an image. So if we go back and not even looking at this, but if I go in to what we have been, let's see, let me close a few things here. This is the project, the I Love Missouri thing we've been working on. And if I go into images here, the only one I have there is Arch. And if I put my mouse over it, it says that it is 1920 by 1078, which means it's 1920 pixels wide and 1078 pixels tall. And if I bring it up in Paint, that's what you see. In fact, if I bring it up in Paint and I go over to Home and I go to Resize, I'm not going to resize it. But if I click on here, look what it has. 1920 and 1078. 1920 wide, 1078 tall. All right, I could resize this if I wanted to, but I don't want to, at this time at least. Okay, all right. So it says an image, for example, has a width and a height defined in the image file. This size is called its intrinsic size. If you place an image on a page and do not change its height and width, either using, putting that into the image tag or by using CSS, it is displayed using its natural or intrinsic size. All right. So there's an example right here. It says, and an empty div, on the other hand, has no size of its own. If you add a div to your HTML and you don't put anything in it, you don't even know it's there. All right. But if you do come in and, as they show in the example here, if you add it with no content but give it a border, you'll see a line on the page. All right. It won't have anything in it, but you can do that. So that's the 5-pixel border, but there's really nothing at all in there. Totally fine to do that if you'd want to. It says in the example above, try adding some text inside of the empty element. Well, if we come in here and do this, and we had an example that we've been playing with earlier, so let's see if we can find that example. And I think this was the one that we were, maybe not, this is download, I don't know what that one is. We'll use that one, it's totally fine. So I'm going to get rid of that title because it doesn't make any sense. And I will come into the style here and change it to that. So we've got a box. All right, and it says it's got a border that's 5 pixels solid dark blue. And there's really nothing else in there. So in our body, let's remove all of this. And we will add this. Try that again. There we go. All right. Now, quite often you'll see it, instead of setting it up that way, it'll just be like this. So I'm going to save this. This is download.html. Let's find the download.html. There it is. Looks the same pretty much as it did. Okay, there you go. There's that 500%. There it is at 100% right there. And you'll notice there at 110, you can see the white line as they showed. So let's add a few things to it instead of what they have. So in other words, let's come in here and let's say that that this will have a width of 400 pixels and it'll have a height of 300 pixels. All right, just one second. All right, so as I come in there, I have now changed it. So the box should be 400 pixels wide and 300 pixels tall. So let's see how that changed it. Again, we'll cut it down so that it's at 100%. There we go. And let's refresh. There you go. All right. Quite often you will end up using divs in here because, for instance, if I add another div, so let me just grab another one. We'll put it right next to it. In fact, it'll be right under it. So watch what happens. So now I've got two of them. What if I wanted them to go side by side? Well, I should be able to do that by creating what? How about another div? What's that going to look like? I guess it didn't look any different, but there are ways that you can come in here and start changing the stuff. I guess for lack of better words, for right now, you'll have to take my word for it. Okay? All right. But what could we do? Well, what if we had a box 1 and we had a box 2? All right. And let's say that this one we're going to make, I don't know, 300 by 200. And we'll put a border around it that will be 5 pixels, but it'll be dotted. And let's make it something that'll really stand out. So yellow. And now if we did this, we'd get an error basically. I shouldn't say an error. Nothing will happen because there is no box class. But if we make this one box 1 and this one box 2, and then we come back in here and refresh. All right, kind of hard to see, but there's the other one. All right, so there's a lot of different ways that you can set this kind of thing up. And we'll be going into some more of it as we go on. I just want to give you a little prelude, so to speak, on this. All right. So they talk about setting a specific size, okay? It says we can, of course, give our elements in our design a specific size. When a size is given to an element, it's called an extrinsic size. It says take our div in the example, we can give it a width and height. Well, that's what I just did. This can cause things to overflow. So if you see this right here, there's a problem. All right. In this second div that we have right here, which we have said, like the first one, is 150 wide by 200 tall, we've actually got more stuff in there. Let's use their example. All right. So I'm going to come back into here, and let's take what we had done in here, and let's just comment it out. And, well, that's the stuff in our body. Sorry about that. So I'm going to comment this out as well. All right, so what do we have? We've got this div that's called wrapper. And inside of the wrapper, we've got 2 more divs, each with a class of box. But the second one has a bunch of text in it. And again, this is all being put in here just to show you what can be done with this. All right. So then if we come back up here, so there's our div, good. All right. And then we come in and we set up this. Let's look at this first before we go and run it. This says that anything with a class of box, which is here and here, all right, should have a solid dark blue border around it of 5 pixels, be 150 wide and 200 tall, right? All right, so let's look and see if indeed after we do this, if it looks like the one looked like in the text. Okay, now ours looks a little different. Don't worry about it. We'll get it so it comes up here in just a bit. But if you look in here, well, right now, it doesn't look like we should have any kind of problem. All right, it looks like it fits. But what if we do this? All right, what if we come in here and we say for the text, what if we say font size to rim? All right, let's see if that changes anything. See the difference? All right, the default browser font size was small enough that it all fit inside of there, but once I made it bigger, you can see that overflow is taking place, which is, of course, what we don't want to have happen. Due to this problem of overflow, fixing the height of elements with lengths and widths is something we need to do very carefully on the web. Well, and the big reason for that is you want it to look, whatever you are going to end up putting out on the web, you want it to look professional. I mean, something like this does not look very professional. All right. So in many ways, as mentioned there, percentages act like length units. They can often be used interchangeably with lengths, but in my opinion, at least, they're better because they will scale. When using a percentage, you need to be aware that it is a percentage. In the case of a box inside of another container, if you give the child box a percentage of width, it will be the percentage of the width of the parent. So we can still run into problems here. All right, so what's different here? Well, let's, again, to me, as I've mentioned to you before, this is the best way to learn this stuff. So I'm going to come back up here, and I'm just going to get rid of what was here before and replace it with this. The key difference or the key takeaway here is the fact that we're using a width of 50% in here. I'm going to get rid of all of this. All right, so we've got that. And then we come back into here. And with our div class equal box, I have a percentage width. That's fine. So we will also get rid of all of this. Replace it with that. Now, should work just the same way that it showed in the book. It should be just fine. There you go. I have a percentage width. See that? Notice as I'm making it bigger, it's all fitting inside of here. But let's look if we put the I have a percentage width, let's put it in there 3 times. If you say I don't know what you mean, just watch if you would. So like that. Let's save it and let's run this again. All right, what happened? Well, it still all fit, didn't it? The box has been adjusted accordingly. All right. So if we go back here to 100%, which is real size, that's what it'll look like. So again, the takeaway, as they're saying, is if you give the child box a percentage width, it's a percentage of the width of the parent container. As mentioned there, this is because percentages resolve the width of the containing block. With no percentage applied, it can take up to 100% of the available space. All right, so with a percentage, this becomes a percentage. So again, if you go, I don't understand, the easiest way is to go back to the example. Let's take the line here with the width, and let's just comment out that single line like that. All right, and let's see if it looks any different. All right, you'll notice now it's the entire thing, but it still looks like it's all going to fit in here. So what if we go and put this in here just an inordinate number of times? So I'm going to do this. All right, so it's in there now 12 times if I counted correctly. I think I did. You can see what happened. The box scaled that they were in. And as I knock this down, it's still in there. It doesn't look very nice anymore. And this will allow us, we talked a little bit about this before, but with media queries. So you can see as the size changes, we could come up with a certain cutoff point in here. And we could say, for instance, maybe when it reaches right there, in fact, this is the big thing. So maybe when it reaches here, for example, we want the font size to go to something smaller. And when it goes to here, maybe something smaller still, and to here, something smaller still, etc. That's the kind of thing that we're going to keep on working with as we go in here and we continue to go over this stuff and talk about, for example, in this case, media queries. All right. So percentage, we'll finish this up and then we will start a new, another portion of this. So percentage margins and paddings, it says if you set margins and paddings as a percentage, you'll notice some strange behavior. In the box below it says we've given the inner box a margin of 10% and a padding of 10%. The margin and padding on the top and bottom look the same as that's on the left and the right. All right. It says you might expect, for example, the top and margins to be a percentage of the element's height, but that's not the case. When you use margin and padding set in percentages, the value is calculated from the inline size of the containing block. In other words, the width when working in a horizontal language. In the example, all of the margins and paddings are 10% of the width, meaning you'll have equal size margins and paddings all the way around the box. All right, so let's stop right here and we'll pick it up on min and max sizes in the next part of this lesson.